I'm Greasy Will, and this is an inside East-West look at Studio 2, the most famous rock room in the entire world, probably. Come with me, let's go. Fucking goddamn, dude. Audioslave, one of my favorites. We'll take a little quick peek while we go. This is the Studio 2 lounge. Ooh, I love how the lights turn on just as if energy saving, you know? I've slept on this couch about 1 billion times. It's the same as the Studio 1 lounge though. Studio 2 is great because Studio 2 is this, like, it's the back a little bit away, separated from the rest. It's also right by the exit. So if you're a smoker, you can go right out the back door to the patio and have yourself a little smoke whenever you're here. Now, Studio 2. If you know about consoles, you know about the Neve 8028 and why it is so important to the rock and roll community. But we'll come back and talk about that in a second. Let's first go out to the live room and talk about the live room here in Studio 2. Studio 2's live room is the only one that's not directly connected to the control room. 1 and 3 and 5 are all directly connected, but 2 is a separate room. Now, also 2 is the only room at East West that has true isolation inside the live room. Now, this little room right here, this specific spot right here, this is famous for being the room where Whitney Houston recorded I Will Always Love You. And for me, the very first seconds of that song, just before she takes a breath, you can hear the air in this ISO booth. It is a very specific sound that to me, as soon as I hear that, it's like, oh, that's the ISO booth in Studio 2. I've never even 100% had it confirmed to me. I think somebody did confirm it one time, but it was like word of mouth type thing or whatever. I can hear it. I can hear it immediately. This room specifically, this big ass room, Studio 2, this to me is one of the most identifiable rooms in all of rock and roll. Like as soon as this room comes on in a drum sound on a record, I know it immediately. But here's the ISO booth. Let's talk about this ISO booth real quick. What we generally use this ISO booth for is whenever we're doing live tracking with full bands, we'll have amps in this ISO booth, or we'll have a singer in this ISO booth. If we're gonna do live tracking with an actual singer singing, and we're not gonna do it in the control room, it's gonna happen inside of this ISO booth. Come on in, we'll take a little look. It's bigger than it seems, because there's a little corner here, and back here is where we'll often put the amps so that they're isolated as much as possible from the rest of the room. Now you can hear it's really tight inside of this room. It's like out there you can hear the room open up or whatever, but inside here it is an extremely tight sound. So this is a great room for doing vocals in because it doesn't have any echo or any flutter. It's really quiet. There's no decay in the room whatsoever. It's really great, but it's also great for doing guitars. Also, you can see there's tie lines in here if you need them. And there's also, this is very common at East West because we didn't have, back in the 60s, whenever they built this place, they didn't have all the same kind of like forward-thinking technology of like, oh, one day we might have to run, you know, private cue heads through the wall, or one day we might. So a lot of the rooms here have just this, and these are just a simple little PVC pipe going through the wall that we stuff with a bag of like this heavy clay type material, and that will block all the sound coming in and out. All right. Out here, I talked about these, I believe, in Studio 1 being called Al Jr. Here is Jeff Jr. and Ben Jr. These are named as such because the people that built them. Ben refers to Ben O'Neill, who is a great engineer here in town, and Jeff Jr., believe it or not, is famous mixing engineer Jeff Ellis. Jeff Ellis built this, and I can tell you for sure that Jeff built this because for the first like 3 years I worked here, this thing did not fucking work. And I had to fix it all the time. Until finally one day, it should say Jeff Jr. / Greasy Jr. because I had to fix this guy. Now, out here in the live room, you'll see the classic Bill Putnam designs on the walls, right? These slatted walls with acoustic treatment behind them. There's some rock wool behind these, and these are meant to be a big diffusion system. And also on the ceiling, you'll notice the classic Bill Putnam levels of treatment. So the ceiling comes at angles and then back up just like the walls in Studio 1 do. Up here on top of this, Famously, back in the day, they said when they were doing Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass Volume 2, which was done inside of this room, as well as the theme to the Beverly Hillbillies, the theme to Green Acres, all sorts of great Wrecking Crew songs from back in the day were done inside this room. But famously, they said they put some brass sections from Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass up here on top of this ISO booth that's back here. Also, famously, is this owl. This owl is the Bad Vibes owl. This Bad Vibes owl is to soak up bad vibes in Studio 2. It's not for scaring off wildlife. They never have any in here. It is simply for soaking up the bad vibes. And it's great at it. Now, this is the second owl. Someone stole the first owl, and may they burn in the depths of hell for doing such a horrible thing. You stole the Bad Vibes owl? Why would you want that on your soul? How could you do that? The Bad Vibes owl? That's ridiculous. Now, recently they've added a Bad Vibes hawk over on the other side, and I don't know if he does the job as good as the Bad Vibes owl, but the Bad Vibes owl does the job well. Now, back here, you'll see we exit out into the back of the studio into where we have the echo chambers and the machine room that we talked about in some of the other videos. And right here, another example of Bill Putnam's famous use of materials inside. These are old freezer doors that are used to seal up the back door here. Whenever we do guitars inside here and we don't put them in the front ISO booth, we'll run them back into this old echo chamber back here, and that's where we keep everything whenever we're tracking. Again, inside this live room, this is one of the most classic sounding rock rooms in the entire world. Some of my favorite records were done inside this building, to include the self-titled Audioslave. And in fact, if you listen to Cochise or Show Me How to Live, the drum sound from those two songs, wow, that is textbook Studio 2 drums. The typical way, right, there is a very specific drum spot in this room, and it's right here. This is the drum spot. This is the best balance between the left and right of the room, the best use of the size of the room, and also the spot where I married my third wife, now divorced, because I did get married inside of this studio. That's how much I love this studio. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite studio in the whole entire world, but it's my favorite studio in the whole entire, it's my favorite rock room. And being a rock guy, whew, I love this studio. So this is the drum spot. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll set up drums here and we can track a live band in here. We'll have the guitar there close to the amps. We'll have the bass here. And if we use an amp, we can either put it inside of the ISO booth in the back, or it can go all the way out the back. But most of the time people just track with the DI here, and if they need to, reamp later. Speaking of the ISO booth that's in here, this is the rear ISO booth. It's currently where we house this Yamaha C7. I don't remember. But this is a beautiful Yamaha piano. It is a grand, it is wonderful, it sounds amazing. It's a C7 because it says it right there. See, I knew it was a C7, that's what I'm talking about. What I talk about in the other studios, specifically with the pianos, is each piano has a vibe very specific to the room that it's in. Studio 3's piano is the old Frank Sinatra Steinway, and it has a feel that's very classic and spongy, and it feels very like, you know, 1960s ballad type stuff. This piano is a rock piano. And I remember so many times whenever I was coming up here, people would say stuff to me about like, oh yeah, that piano's really bright, that piano's really bright. And I had an artist, Kate Dunton, come in one time, who's an amazing pianist, and I told her, everybody says this piano's really bright, and she's like, that's cool, I just won't play it so hard. And I was like, oh my God, that's the first time I've heard anybody that plays piano go, yeah, I'll just play it differently. And then I was like, the biggest realization of like, it's in your fingers, like the whole instrument's in your fingers. But this piano is an amazing sound, especially for rock, because when you're playing rock piano, you want something that cuts through all those guitars and all that sound and all that texture and tone. So this piano is perfect for that. It's a beautiful piano, it sounds amazing. It's one of my favorite pianos in the entire world, even though I forgot whether it was a C6 or a C7, or if there even is a C6. But also you'll notice all pianos here, they've got some dings. None of them are perfect. Studio pianos have a hard life. You know, they get moved a lot. This piano gets brought out in the live room and then back into the booth in here and then back into the live room. And an experienced runner here knows exactly how to get the piano through these doors because it doesn't just go through any old way. You have to put it a specific angle to get the piano through these doors because it is exactly measuring this out. All right, it's fingertip to elbow. And if you come over here, fingertip to elbow. It is exactly the width that it takes to get this piano. It's probably why they put this piano in here, is because it was the only one that they could still fit inside the booth. Now, this booth also has tie lines in the back of it that you can run to the control room and power. A lot of times this will be the key room whenever you're doing a band tracking thing. Now you can see, these are not real soundproof type doors. This isn't a big, thick, heavy door. It's not necessarily like soundproof, but it's soundproof enough. And in studios like East West and all these classic studios, you embrace the bleed. It's one of the things that makes these studios sound so good. I love this studio, so I love this booth. I love the use of booths in this studio because again, this is the only one here at East West with true isolation. So I love it. As per the other studios, one thing I love about East West so much is that I can remember my own experiences in here. And one of them was doing this exact thing. These are old hose reels or whatever the hell they are. I built this whole thing so that we could store cables because we used to just store cables on this little shelf here. Another thing too that you'll notice, this is double pane glass with a gap in the middle. So when you're using stuff in the control room, when you're doing stuff out here, there is true isolation between the two. And because the door doesn't directly connect, this is one of the best controlled sounds between the live room and the control room. Let's go into the control room and we'll have some conversations about why that is the best console in the world. This hallway's got the mirrors. It's also a big hallway. If you ever need to like get a crazy drum sound, you can open up the doors for the live room there, and this big old echo chamber exists in here. Now, one of the things that I love about Studio 2 is these legs. I don't know if you've heard about these, but these are amazing EQs. One of my favorites. They're everything the Pultec isn't. Over here, we have the Neve 8028. If you watched the Sound City documentary, you saw Dave Grohl's love of this console, and there's a great reason for it. This console is 40 channels of Neve 1073 mic pre's. These are one of the most coveted mic pre's in the entire world. Even today, the most knocked off mic pre of all time. Every single company in the entire world that makes mic pre's makes a 1073 clone, and there's a reason for it. It is majestic. Now, there is 40 friggin' channels of this 1073 here, which means that if you are recording a band in here, you can do anything you want. I know every room here like it's my family, but this room I know like the back of my hand. This was the scene of my very first session of my recording career, working with John Bryan in this room. And nothing challenges you like working with John Bryan in a studio. So I know this console, I know this room, I know every corner, every nook and cranny, and it's hard to say my favorite studio because I always say this about East West. You can't get better, you can just get different. Every single room here has something so magical and special about each one of them, down to even like the way the lights dim in this control room, the way things sound, the way things feel, the little tiny quirks you get out of each console and everything. But this console, this 8028, is just magical. I have seen people get bad sounds out of it, but I don't know how they do it. Like, it is harder to get bad recordings from this than it will ever be to get good recordings. This console is one of my favorites. It has many interesting quirks. To start off with, I'll say, get out of my way, chair. This is a split monitor design, similar to the way that the other two consoles here are, but unlike Studio One, where most people use just the whole console as a kind of like split monitor in itself with all of the channels, this is truly a split monitor where people use the 24-channel monitor section. And the monitor section on this console sounds fantastic. It's a great sounding monitor section, and it has a lot of options, like this cool little jukebox over here for Q sends. You can actually send everything into this, like each one of these has a stereo Q send for Q1 and Q2, and then also 5 through 8 has a mono send that you can control. So this is an amazing way to control headphone sends if you are using the console itself and not a hearback system, which a lot of people do use the hearback system, but I actually really prefer to use the stereo returns on this board over here for the jukebox that really just, it's got something cool. It sounds great. People love the way it sounds overall, and it has highly controllable 24 channels of returns there. Then also to the 24 channels. Now, this is a quad monitor console, but no one uses the quad console. But in an emergency, which has happened many times, we do sometimes use what is essentially the rear bus, and we switch over and use the rear stereo bus instead of the front stereo bus, because maybe something happened to the front stereo bus. And then when you deal with vintage consoles, I'll say this many times, when you deal with vintage consoles, you have to accept the quirks and mistakes and the problems that happen. I've definitely worked on this console before with other engineers when they'll be like, the EQ switch makes a lot of noise whenever you engage it. I'm like, what are you, engaging it in the middle of tracking? Just push it in and don't touch it, you know? Old consoles, they need to be exercises. These are all hand-wired modules in here. You open up one of these modules, you see these are all hand-wired in here. Well, you can't see the whole thing, but these are all hand-wired modules and signed by Rupert Neve, which is really funny. Almost every one of these, I think, is signed by Rupert Neve. Also on this console, which is really funny, over here is a Best Wishes Rupert Neve, but you can't really see it because once upon a time, some silly runner in here thought they were cleaning the console and scrubbed off Rupert Neve's signature, which is really, really funny mistake to make. But it is there. It does say Best Wishes Rupert, and it's got a date that I can't read at all, but it is there. At one point in time, somebody changed these rotary faders over here. They were not originally this, but they are now a pre-fade send for the patch bay here trim knob. So you can change your trim levels coming into the pre-fade send for the console, for the insert, send, and returns. And then there's also pre and post echo sends here and pre and post Q sends, which are two different functionalities essentially, but have become the same in today's environment. 24 channels busing over here, which if you are a fan of history of these consoles, which I am specifically this room, a big fan of the history of it, this was the console that was used for Iggy Pop's Raw Power that was mixed by Bowie in this studio. So famously, they mixed on this console and it was 24 channels, sounded amazing. That's pretty much the Studio 2 8028. It's got cool function, it sounds amazing, but its simplicity is really what makes it so great. You know, specifically the EQ bands, not a lot going on here. There's not a lot of options, but they're the best sounding options that you can get. 12K shelf on the top, you know, 6 or 7 EQ points that you can use and just a booster cut on that. And that's pretty much it. And that's what makes up one of the best consoles in the entire world. Like the other rooms here at East West, we got the ATCs up in the walls and usually NS10s on the board. And then this is also, I mentioned this, but this is also one of my favorite functionalities of this room is we got these dimmer switches over here for the, woo! Look at this, you feel like you're driving a car with these things, man. You can really dim these lights up in here, you know? You can get one for all of them. Let's turn the speakers down. Let's get some mood lighting up in here, guys. Need the couch down. Let's do it all, let's turn it all. Let's get the mood lighting everywhere in this bitch. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's some mood lighting. This is the best room in the entire world. Studio 2, East West. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for getting the vibe with me here in Studio 2. I encourage you to watch the rest of the videos in this series because nobody talks about East West like me, because this is my birthplace. This is my home. This is the place I've spent the most time. I've done thousands of sessions inside of these rooms, and so no one has a bigger appreciation for it than I do. Make sure you follow East West on all their socials. Make sure you follow me, Greasy Will, on all my socials, and you can fit so much sound up inside this bad boy. Thanks for joining me. This is Inside East West with Greasy.